First topic on our list, impeachment. When we last broadcasted, the impeachment inquiry was just starting to heat up with a series of closed-door depositions. Well, certainly a lot has changed since then. On Thursday of last week, Congress left for Thanksgiving recess. But before fleeing the city, they held 17 closed-door depositions for over 100 hours in the skiff and heard from 12 key witnesses over the course of 5 days in the public impeachment hearings before the House Intelligence Committee. Lots of questions were asked, some were answered, but a lot still loom. So with that, let's jump right in. President Trump was invited by top Democrats to testify before the House Intel Committee in a public setting. Do you think, Josh, we'll go to you first, do you think he should testify in this public setting, possibly bring any exculpatory information? Do you think it would be a smart move for the president to go under oath?
Well, sure. I think that the invitation was to appear in public or to submit written testimony, and I think that it would be fair for the president to release his side of the story in written form. I'd be worried about the potential for a perjury trap if he were to appear publicly. I don't think he'd get away with retelling a parody of what happened. He would need to be clear about, the story, and I would just be sure. I think it's fine to have him submit in writing. I think that.
So I want to ask a question about that. So the House has recently opened up an investigation into President Trump's written remarks, written answers for the Mueller investigation for possible perjury. He's already being investigated for those written answers. Do you think it's smart for him to go down that road again?
Well, like I said, I was about to say, I think transparency and oversight are fundamental portions of our American system of checks and balances, and I think it's fair for the Congress to request written testimony from the president, given how deeply involved he is there. And I think he's got, full team White House counsel, personal lawyers, that submitting full testimony shouldn't be a problem.
Andrew, what do you think? Is this a smart move for the president to testify publicly?
A smart move for the president? No, I don't think so. I think if there were any exculpatory evidence that the president had, it would have been blanketing the airways by now. And let's be clear, this is not a partisan take or a controversial take. The president is known to lie pretty habitually. You brought up the concept of a perjury trap. I think, if he were to testify publicly or even in writing, there would be a strong chance that he would, as you said, deliver some kind of a parody or embellish or otherwise distort the truth to the extent that it could be legally problematic for him. So I don't think it would be a smart move for the president to testify, but I think the fact that it's not a smart move for the president to testify says more about the president than it does about House Democrats.
Do you think, though, that his remarks, his side of the story, should be included in the inquiry?
Absolutely. I think that, in any kind of investigation, be it political like impeachment or legal, the subject of the investigation or the procedure should have the right to lay out their side of the story. But the Republicans have been laying out Trump's side of the story pretty extensively in these hearings. So it's not like Trump's side of the story has gotten no bandwidth, no oxygen whatsoever. I do think he should have the right to present his side of the story in the ultimate sort of iteration of the hearings and of the final House vote, but I think we definitely have heard from him quite a bit.
So now we're going to move on looking at, and Keith, we're going to go to you first, looking into a specific testimony that was during former Ukrainian Ambassador Marie Yovanovitch's, her public testimony. During that time, in the beginning, President Trump tweeted, quote, "Everywhere Marie Yovanovitch went turned bad. She started off in Somalia. How did that go? Fast forward to Ukraine, where the new Ukrainian president spoke unfavorably about her in my second phone call with him. It is a U.S. president's absolute right to appoint ambassadors." Chairman Schiff, as we probably saw, read the tweet in real time, getting reaction. He called it witness intimidation. Yovanovitch said, quote, "It was very intimidating." I don't want to know if you think that this is witness intimidation or if it isn't, but what do you think this says about the president's perceived, presumed innocence or guilt in this inquiry?
So let's be really clear. This is 100% witness intimidation. When you have the most powerful man in the world tweeting at you while you're testifying before Congress, he is indeed trying to intimidate you. Marie Yovanovitch is a patriot. She should not face that kind of scrutiny from somebody as high up as Donald Trump. I believe that if Donald Trump is tweeting at this level during a testimony, it says something about his innocence. He should let the facts speak for himself, and it's another reason why he should actually go under oath. His advisors certainly don't want him to because, as Andrew mentioned, we do have a compulsive liar in the office. But this is what's right under a standard impeachment investigation.
Grace, what does it say about the president's presumed innocence or guilt?
In this system nowadays, it's guilty until proven innocent. I feel like he needs to go out there and lay his side of the story and really prove his innocence.
But a better question would be,
Okay.
do you think that the president tweeting during the testimony and, like some say, witness intimidation, do you think that says more that he's guilty and he feels the need to attack the witness, or do you think he's innocent and he feels strong enough to sort of defend himself in this inquiry?
I feel like he's strong enough to defend himself. I mean, Marie is a government employee. It's her job to perform, and if he's getting bad reviews on her multiple times, I mean, I think it's his right to, decide who's going to work and who's not going to work.
And I think the way that President Trump would view this, I'm not saying this is the way I believe it, is he has consistently said when he feels like he is being attacked, which I suppose he feels that way about her testimony, that he is going to hit back and that he'll never be afraid to hit back. And so I think that's the angle he's coming from, that he isn't going to follow these norms, whether you agree with that or not. That's kind of what his argument would be there, I think.
But let's be clear, these are ad hominem attacks. He's not attacking the substance of her argument. He's attacking the person, Marie Yovanovitch, based on her record as a past ambassador to Somalia and to Ukraine. And I think we also should recognize that basically President Trump is not he's not, this notion that he's guilty until proven innocent is not correct. He has admitted on camera that he did have a conversation with the president of Ukraine, saying that he was encouraging an investigation into the Bidens. That is plain outright colluding with a foreign government. This is just the facts.
So we're going to touch on that right now when we look into another key witness's testimony. So one of the Democrats' key witnesses, both behind closed doors and in the public setting, was Gordon Sondland, the U.S. ambassador to the European Union and a large supporter of President Trump. But to the chagrin of the House Republicans, Sondland flipped on the president, answering a key question the Dems have been on the hunt for. Take a listen.
I know that members of this committee frequently frame these complicated issues in the form of a simple question. Was there a quid pro quo? As I testified previously, with regard to the requested White House call and the White House meeting, the answer is yes.
So during this entire impeachment inquiry, the Democrats have been on a hunt and talking about this one phrase, quid pro quo. They've been looking for a first-hand witness to admit that there was a quid pro quo. Sondland did, and he is indeed a first-hand witness. However, it doesn't seem like this has swayed many of the opinions of Republicans when this is what Democrats have been banking on. That said, what do you think would have to happen, if anything, if it's possible, for a Republican to flip in this impeachment inquiry? Andrew, we'll go to you first.
Honestly, I'm really not sure what it would take to flip the Republicans in the House. Obviously, if public opinion were to start to flag against the president, then I believe House Republicans would abandon him like that. There would be not even a question. He would just have all political support lost. I do think it's important to note, though, important to be, look at the facts strictly. Gordon Sondland basically flip-flopped on himself a few separate times throughout this entire process. I do not think Democrats should really put all of their eggs in the Gordon Sondland basket. He has contradicted himself. He's revised his testimony many times when it appeared to be legally convenient for him to do so. But I think that the grand totality of witnesses Democrats have summoned, the grand totality of evidence that they've gathered, paints an absolutely damning picture of Donald Trump's efforts to get Ukraine to interfere in the upcoming election by withholding aid on the condition that the Bidens be investigated by Ukraine. I think
Is there a response from the other side?
Well, I think the answer to this kind of what would it take a Republican to flip kind of gets back to that quote you just played. This whole thing isn't a cut and dry question of is there a quid pro quo or not. There's a lot of information here, so that's why we're gathering all this testimony, all the facts. And I think I'd like to kind of associate myself with what we saw Congressman Will Hurd say, very experienced former CIA operative, one of the most moderate members of our party on the Intel Committee, and he kind of said, the impeachment is the ultimate, most severe level of accountability you can apply to a president. And there needs to be more clarity in order for, especially Republicans, but really for any member of Congress to be able to say that that ultimate level of accountability, impeachment of the president, should be taken.
So we are running out of time, so I want to move on to another really interesting factor in this impeachment inquiry. Last week during her weekly presser, Speaker Pelosi had said that she does not plan, and top Democrats do not plan, on waiting for the courts to finish looking at the subpoenas of Acting Chief of Staff Mick Mulvaney, Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, and former National Security Advisor John Bolton. That means that Nancy Pelosi doesn't think that the Democrats should wait for the courts to figure out if those three individuals should appear in a public testimony setting because it will take too long. Do you think that Pelosi and the Democrats are making the right decision here? How important are those testimonies, or is it more important to wrap up the inquiry quickly with 2020 just around the corner? What do you guys think on the right first?
I believe that we should be wrapping up this impeachment inquiry. I mean, we don't know what further evidence is going to come forward. We don't know what's going to happen with this. And with 2020 coming around the corner, I think it's really important for the Democrats and the Republicans to focus on this upcoming race.
On the Democrats, how important are these three testimonies, or are they not that important?
So, if I may, I think that the Democrats already have a solid case for impeachment right now. We have this man, through his own transcript that he released, saying that he was indeed asking the president of Ukraine to investigate a political opponent, and this actually is not quid pro quo, this is extortion. He was going to withhold aid from Ukraine if they did not investigate the Bidens.
Understood, but do you think that it's more important to get these three testimonies or to wrap it up quickly?
I think it should be wrapped up quickly. I agree with my colleague on the other side. That this process should not be elongated for political purposes. This is strictly a legal issue. The American people want the facts concisely. We should not drag this out and make this a campaign issue. This should be about making sure the president is held accountable.
So you don't think that the inquiry would be incomplete without these three key testimonies?
I don't know what sort of information Mick Mulvaney would have that we don't already have. I think the evidence against the president is already so damning. I'm not sure what that information would be.
All right, and now for a final question. Of course, the Congress will decide whether the president is impeached or not in the House and in the Senate, but a lot of the times what people say what matters most is the court of public opinion. And finally, the public was able to see these testimonies as they were publicly transpired before the House Intel Committee. Do you think that the series of 12 individuals we saw in a public setting, 5 days of 7 hearings, do you think that those have changed public opinion in any way? Whoever wants to take it first.
So, I mean, if we look at the average of, Donald Trump's approval rating over the last couple of weeks, it's dipped a little bit, but an interesting phenomenon of Donald Trump is that people seem to have made up their minds as to whether they like him or not. And it seems as though rather than one particular testimony being sort of the nail in the coffin for Donald Trump's approval rating, if it were to slide, if he were to lose public support, it would be just the grand totality, the whole entire impeachment process. And I think it's too early to tell if that's necessarily going to be the case, but I think that it's important to bear in mind how the court of public opinion in this process is very, very different than it has been in previous impeachment processes. I'm not, there was a quote, I don't know who said it, I can't recall, but someone basically said, if Richard Nixon had Fox News, he would have served out his second term. I firmly believe that I'm not, necessarily going to, stand here and rag on Fox News for a couple minutes, but I think that the polarization of our country at this point has led a lot of people to have knee-jerk support for Donald Trump. But, some have knee-jerk support for Democrats too, but specifically to Donald Trump, I think there are a lot of people who, and especially in Congress, who will support him even when an objective assessment of the facts suggests that they should not.
Josh, I see you last.
I think
we'll
you
give
hit
you the last.
Yeah, you hit the. I won't sit here and rag on MSNBC either. So don't worry. But I think you hit the nail on the head that people's opinion on impeachment, unfortunately, is very tied to whether they already dislike the president or they already love the president. And the only place there's really room for wiggle maybe is in the middle. And you have seen in recent days the support for impeachment amongst independents go down somewhat. Now, whether that'll hold, I don't know. And I think where most Americans have come out on this and where I'm starting to go on this is, again, to invoke what Congressman Hurd's shared in his questioning, that this is troubling precedent to set. It's not the right public policy methods that the president should be going about. But as far as impeaching the president goes, I don't know that would be the right method of accountability here.
We're going to have to close the impeachment conversation there. We have more topics to get to. But after this, we'll take you to a new segment we like to call News from the Nine, straight from the highest court in the land. Stay tuned.